The ridge above the accident site had long since gone quiet. Late summer heat had taken the morning's chatter with it, leaving only the soft tick of wind-blown gravel and the brittle sigh of dry cedar needles. Below, where the hillside curved in on itself like a folded palm, the shattered remains of a blue station wagon lay bent against the trunk of a ponderosa pine. The roof had partially collapsed. One of the rear doors hung open, its metal skin curled like torn paper, and beside it, chest low to the dirt, legs stiff in weight, was the dog. He wasn't large, maybe 30 pounds, sable-backed with a gray snout and tufts of white fur, clumped from dust and sweat. His ears flicked not toward sound, but memory, a kind of alertness that wasn't for protection, exactly, but something quieter, more patient, the kind of stillness that comes when a creature is not afraid. Just hold in. The first responders had come and gone. The crash was 2 nights old. The coroner had zipped the last of the stretchers by dusk the previous day. No survivors. That much was easy to understand. The embankment was steep and lined with slick shale. An overcorrection on a blind curve, they said, but the dog had remained curled beneath the hanging door in the dirt, eyes tracing the edge of the tree line. Then back to the car's dim interior. Locals had tried to coax him with food. One even left a trail of boiled chicken along the gravel turnout. He sniffed it, stepped forward once, then sat, not defiant, not afraid, just resolved, as if what he was waiting for wasn't food, or help, or even the people who used to ride with him. It was something else, something still inside. A ranger named Clara was the last to try that morning, mid-50s, shoulders stiff from years of wearing gear in all seasons, and hair pulled back in a loose braid that dust collected like pollen. She hadn't expected him to move for her, not really, but she had crouched anyway, hands loose on her knees, saying nothing, just letting her presence fill the air like mist. His eyes met hers for less than a second. There was no recognition, no request, just the quiet of an animal whose job hadn't yet ended. By midday, the wind picked up. Juniper leaves turned their pale undersides to the sky, a faint signal of changing air, maybe storms by evening. Clara stayed longer than she meant to. The radio on her hip had crackled once, dispatch asking if she'd checked the burn lines further north. She hadn't answered yet. It wasn't pity that kept her there. It was something older, a feeling she hadn't known how to name since her brother's truck was found years ago in a similar gully. No survivors then, either, except one small retriever mix who'd stayed 3 days by the riverbank, fur soaked through, eyes fixed downstream. That dog hadn't known Clara, but it had waited for her anyway. This one was different, not loyal in the usual sense, not frantic. There was no barking, no pacing, just that unmoving, unblinking watch. And when Clara took a step closer to the wreck, slow, respectful, boots crunching on sun-baked gravel, the dog did not growl, but he stood. The motion was stiff. One leg shook slightly as he rose, but he didn't retreat. Instead, he positioned himself directly between Clara and the open door of the station wagon, his head low, tail still, not warning, not guarding in the way of threat. It was more. Invitation denied. Clara stopped, just 10 feet away now. From her angle, she could see inside the car. Dried blood pooled on the passenger floor, an empty car seat in the back, a broken thermos leaking syrup onto a crushed paperback novel. But then something shifted, not in the car, not in the dog, the air itself. A smell, faint, metallic, but not blood, not rot, more like old batteries left in a drawer too long. The dog's nose twitched just once. Then he turned his head, not to Clara, but to the back seat, and gave a low whine, a sound so soft it barely moved the space around them. And in that moment, something stirred under the floor mat behind the driver's seat. Not a person, but something. Clara's breath caught. She didn't step forward. The dog hadn't moved, and the sound, faint, rhythmic like a heartbeat or a soft shuffle, faded again into silence. The breeze picked up. Distant thunder grumbled somewhere beyond the foothills. Clara slowly reached for her radio. The dog did not look away. Clara didn't call for backup. Not yet. Her thumb hovered over the radio's transmit button, but something in the dog's posture made her hesitate. He hadn't moved. Not a paw, but his weight had shifted slightly forward, a lean so subtle it could have been mistaken for wind. His ears were neither pinned nor alert. They just listened. Not for her. For whatever had made that sound. The breeze stirred again, tugging loose strands of Clara's hair against her cheek. Her tongue was dry. She swallowed, slowly held the radio without pressing the button. Her hand dropped to her belt, brushing against the soft canvas pouch she sometimes carried for injured birds, a habit from her days in the lower flats, where barn owls often got tangled in wire fencing. But she wasn't reaching for it now. She was just remembering what it meant to wait properly, wait the way wild things do when they sense something fragile, something changing. A rustle came from the vehicle, not a sharp one, more like a crinkle fabric, or a light scratch, from beneath the driver's seat. The mat bulged ever so slightly. Clara stepped forward, just 1 foot. The dog didn't growl, but his tail stiffened. There was no menace in him, only a warning that whatever lay behind that tension wasn't ready for her yet. Then the silence broke again, not from the car. From above, a distant crunch of tires. Someone driving too fast. down the ridgeline road, probably a looky-loo who'd heard about the wreck. Clara turned her head instinctively, eyes narrowing toward the tree line. The forest was quiet, but not for long. When she looked back, the dog had moved, only 2 steps, but he was now flush against the car door, pressing his side to the metal, his eyes fixed on her in a way that seemed almost pleading, not for food, not for safety, for time. Clara raised both hands, palms open. She stepped back. Nature settled. Again, somewhere beyond the tree line, a scrub jay called, 3 clipped notes, then silence. The wind dipped low, rustling dry grasses and turning the cedar scent sharp. Clara waited. And this time, the mat in the back seat shifted again. Only now, she caught a glimpse, just a sliver. A small, dry paw pushing against the cloth from beneath. Tiny claws. Mottled fur, not fresh. A possum. No, not in that position. It was smaller than that, and then it blinked. A faint glint of light caught the eye, round, still crusted with something dust, sap maybe, but alert, watching her. A kitten? No, not a house cat. The muzzle was too flat, ears too high. Wild, but not feral. Clara squinted, lowering herself slowly until she was nearly level with the back of the car, and then it moved, the animal, whatever it was, inching further from the hidden space beneath the seat. The dog didn't flinch. He just turned slightly to make room. The creature crawled forward 1 inch at a time until its shape became clear. A raccoon, not quite a kit, but barely old enough to walk steadily. The fur around its flank was matted with blood, not fresh, but dried in streaks. It limped once, then tucked itself into the hollow curve of the dog's front legs, curling tight against his chest. He licked its ear once, gently. Clara exhaled. That smell, the metallic tinge, it hadn't come from the car. It had come from the raccoon's wound, likely internal, possibly infected. The realization hit her slow and low. This dog, whoever he belonged to, hadn't been guarding a person. He'd been guarding this creature, injured, barely conscious, and tucked into the floorboards of a wrecked car like a passenger too small to be noticed. The dog looked up now, met her gaze, and this time, there was something different in his expression. Not a plea, not fear, but a kind of weary offering, a gesture of quiet surrender, as if to say, now you've seen it. Now decide. Clara didn't move closer. Instead, she opened her pouch and placed it gently on the gravel, 10 feet away. She unzipped it and laid it flat, revealing the soft blanket folded inside. Nothing more. Then she sat down cross-legged, at eye level, and waited. Wind moved through the trees again, soft, steady. The dog looked down at the raccoon, then back at her, and for the first time in nearly 2 days, he stepped away from the wreckage, only 1 pace, then another. Behind him. The raccoon tried to follow shakily with effort before collapsing onto its haunches beside the torn wheel well. The dog paused, watched it, then looked back to Clara. Still not close, but no longer blocking the way. Clara blinked hard. Steady. And in that small, precise moment under the shadows of pine and circling wind, something shifted between them. Not trust, not yet, but understanding. Then, from somewhere far behind her, came a sound neither of them wanted. A second vehicle approaching, slower, cautious, too cautious, and Clara knew, without turning, that whoever it was had seen the wreck, and they weren't coming to help. A soft gust swept down the slope, lifting ash-dry needles into slow spirals. The afternoon light had thinned, not quite sunset, but the shadows had taken on that early amber edge that makes every movement feel watched. Clara stayed where she was, one hand on the radio, the other resting just above her knee. She hadn't called it in yet. Something about the way the dog held that space, rigid but calm, made the moment feel like it wasn't hers to interrupt. The sound she'd heard, it hadn't come again. The back seat was still. No further shuffle, no breath, no twitch of fabric, but the dog hadn't moved either. His eyes were fixed on the narrow crack beneath the rear passenger seat, where that faint metallic scent had seeped through like something old awakening. Then his posture shifted, subtle but deliberate. He lowered himself again, this time not with the curled stiffness of a dog standing watch, but with a kind of heavy uncertainty, the way animals lie down when they are not sure if they'll be getting back up. His left leg folded slower than the right. Clara noticed then the fur just above his paw was stained dark, tacky look, an old wound maybe reopened in the scramble down the ridge. Clara exhaled through her nose, just once, not a sigh, not quite relief, more like giving her breath somewhere to go besides her throat. The silence was long. When it broke, it wasn't with sound. It was with motion. From within the crushed shell of the station wagon, a single wasp slipped into the light, slow, dipping flight through the shattered side window. Then another, and another. Clara squinted. They weren't coming from the back seat, they were rising from beneath it. That changed things. She stepped forward, only a few inches. The dog's ears flicked, but he didn't rise. His eyes followed her, not with defiance, but with a quiet permission, a kind of truce. She moved closer, slowly circling the rear of the wreck, boot soles testing gravel that gave just slightly underfoot. When she came around the far side of the car, the angle changed. Through the broken rear glass, just past the collapsed front seat, She saw what she hadn't before, a pile of shredded packaging, boxes, foil wrappers, cardboard torn like it had been chewed, and in the center, unmistakable even in shadow, a plastic cooler. Its lid was half jammed open, warped from heat. The scent hit her next. Not blood, not rot. Formula. Canned formula, milk-based, concentrated, the kind used for infants or tube-fed animals. Clara didn't speak, but her fingers twitched near the radio. The dog rose again, this time faster. He limped around to the same side she had taken, stopping just short of her boots. His head tipped toward the wreck, not watching her, but the cooler. And in his movement, Clara caught something she hadn't expected. Hesitation. Not toward her, but toward the car itself. The truth clicked into place, sharp and quiet. He hadn't been guarding a person. He hadn't even been guarding something alive. He had been guarding what remained of a purpose. And then a sound from the thicket below. A rustle too heavy for wind. Clara turned her head instinctively, scanning the brush. The light was beginning to slip, turning the space between trees into deepening bands of contrast. At first there was nothing. Then motion, a shape moving slow and low, through the undergrowth, hunched and deliberate. Not a predator, but human. Boy. Maybe 10. Thin face, streaked with dirt, arms scraped raw from bramble. He stepped into view like someone surfacing from a dream, blinking too slowly. Mouth parted as if tasting the air for something real. His eyes locked on the car, then the dog, then Clara. He didn't run, he didn't speak. He just stood there, and the dog, that dog, who had not moved for anyone in 2 days, gave a low, breathy whine. Then he limped forward, not to Clara too. The boy, the child's knees buckled, not from drama, but from sheer depletion. He crouched in the dust. The dog curled against him, pressing into his side, and for the first time, Clara noticed a line of tiny scratches on the dog's back. Thorn cuts, the kind you get running through undergrowth far too dense for any easy return. The boy whispered something inaudible. Clara still hadn't moved. She kept her hand off the radio. This wasn't her story to tell just yet. But she took a step closer to the car, and that's when she saw it. On the inside of the rear passenger window, almost invisible against the grime, was a streaker word, smeared in something that looked like powdered formula and damp ash. 3 letters. Doc, not dog, not a name. Doc, a label, or a note, or something else entirely. And just beneath it, in the cooler, now slightly ajar, was a bundle wrapped in thermal foil. It moved. First drops landed like whispered warnings, cold on skin, without weight, without scent. Clara didn't look up. She kept her hand on the radio but didn't press the button. The dog hadn't blinked. His body, though tired, seemed to press deeper into the gravel now, anchoring itself with attention to quiet to name the movement. She'd seen behind the driver's seat. Under the floor mat hadn't returned, but it hadn't been imagined either. It had been deliberate, rhythmical, too slow to be panic, too steady to be mechanical. There was a pulse to it, a shape, a presence. And the dog had responded not with alarm but with that thin, breathy whine, like he knew, like he'd been listening for it, guarding it, waiting. Clara's boots shifted. Her knees ached from crouching so long, but she didn't rise. She stayed at eye level with the dog, letting the weight of her gaze fall not on him, but beside him to the earth, to the soaked corner of a sleeping bag peeking from the crumpled rear footwell. It looked old, not bloodied, just used, familiar. The wind stirred harder now, bringing with it the scent of distant rain on asphalt and crushed pine needles. The air moved like a veil being drawn back, revealing things that didn't want to be named. Clara felt it in her chest, that sense, too old and too internal for words, that something quiet was beginning to come undone. She stood slowly. The dog didn't growl, but his eyes flicked toward her legs, watching for movement, not out of fear, but calculation. She walked in an arc, not toward the wreck but beside it, giving a wide berth as she moved to the passenger side. From here, she could see more of the rear seat. Candy wrappers, an old hiking boot, a cloth bag tied at the handles, and tucked underneath it, barely visible, what looked like the corner of a small plastic kennel, turned on its side. Not a person, not food, not empty. A shiver went through her, not from the cold, but recognition, and with it, a shift. Not in the story, but in her. Clara hadn't wanted to assign meaning to the dog's watchfulness, but now she could feel it. This was not loyalty, it was duty. It was containment. Lightning flashed somewhere to the north, not near enough to fear, but enough to light the jagged silhouette of a buzzard's wing overhead. The air tensed. Behind her, gravel shifted, a sound not made by her feet. She turned. The dog had moved, only slightly, a single paw forward. He no longer blocked the car. He sat alongside it now, chest square, eyes steady. A sentry, yes, but not of protection. Of passage, and Clara understood, not fully, but enough. He wasn't guarding something alive. He was holding space for something not yet gone. She stepped closer to the open rear door. The mat still looked undisturbed, but the air had changed. That strange smell, alkaline, faintly sweet, was stronger now. And then, as the wind shifted again, she heard it. Not movement this time, but breath. Thin, whistling, irregular, too soft for a child, too labored for a raccoon or wild thing. Her hand hovered above the edge of the seat. She didn't touch anything yet, not until she saw the crate more clearly, and inside it, hunched and shaking, the curled form of a baby goat. Its fur was matted with mud and dry juice, a rope collar tangled around its leg. One eye was open, blood crusted at the corner, and it let out a noise so faint it was more vibration than sound, not fear, not pain. Something older than both, resignation. The dog stepped forward again, this time coming to stand beside Clara. He didn't look at her. He looked into the crate, and then something changed. His body loosened, just slightly, as if some unseen burden had passed from his shoulders into the air around them. He turned once in a slow circle and lay down again, this time with his back to the car. He was no longer watching. His job was over. Clara reached into the car. Her arms trembled. The rain began to fall in earnest now, soft, steady, like the hush of a blanket over glass. The trees did not rustle. The wind no longer carried thunder. And as she lifted the goat from the crate, light, fragile bones pressing too near the skin, a single feather drifted down beside them, snagging on the rearview mirror before tumbling softly into her open palm. She didn't know what it meant, but something did. The baby goat didn't resist. Its body, limp in Clara's arms, felt lighter than it should have, not from malnourishment alone, but from surrender. Its breathing was still shallow, but steadier now, in the rhythm of the falling rain. She cradled it gently, adjusting her grip so the tangled rope wouldn't tighten around its leg. And when she turned to walk back toward the turnout, the dog didn't follow. He remained where he had laid down, ears lowered, eyes half closed. Clara stopped and looked back. The wreck loomed behind him, sagging deeper into itself, the crumpled metal glistening under the wet light. It had become less of a vehicle, more of a husk, a memory made visible, the kind that didn't shout for attention, just waited, quiet and unmoved. For those who remembered, she waited, but the dog didn't rise. He wasn't broken, and he wasn't waiting anymore. He had done what he came to do. The job hadn't been about survival. It had been about staying, about keeping one small life from vanishing without witness. The goat had not belonged to the car's passengers. Not exactly. Someone must have picked it up along the way, maybe as a rescue, maybe as a favor, maybe just a whim. But the dog had stayed for it, not because it was his, but because it was left. Clara walked the rest of the way to her truck with the goat pressed close against her chest. The scent of rain and pine blended with faint milk sourness from the animal's fur. She wrapped it in a canvas top from the back seat, turned the heater on low, and left the door ajar so the sound wouldn't feel like silence. She didn't call for the dog again. The road back was slow, not for the conditions, but because she stopped twice. Once at the ranger station, where she handed the goat to a junior staffer with quiet instructions, and once at a turnout above the gorge, where she stood with her hands in her coat pockets and looked down toward the wreck. From here, the car was almost invisible beneath the trees, lost in the folds of land and shadow. The dog was gone, not walked away, not vanished, just no longer part of the scene. The rain had washed the dust from the gravel, but where he'd lain, a patch of flattened earth remained, pressed in the shape of something who had kept vigil long enough for the burden to pass. Clara didn't take a photo. She didn't radio in. She stood a while longer, letting the mist settle on her collar and the sound of distant birdsong rise again, unbothered from the tree line. And when she finally turned to go, the wind lifted through the branches, slow, soft, gathering, and carried with it a single scrap of sun-bleached paper from the wreckage below. It drifted upward, past her boots, past the road, until it snagged on the low branch of a fir tree. It hung there, unreadable, but not forgotten.